So the fire's roaring, the room's definitely warmed up a bit, and I've been asked to do 2 draught excluders in blues or greys. Now I'm a big one for recycling, and my classes have been doing lots of recycling projects with donated denim that we had given to us, but this is a pile out of my stash, and I thought I'd take the inspiration from what we've been doing in class, and I'd recycle some denim because the area that the draught excluders are going to go into, the carpet is quite a denim-y blue, and then there's a lot of grey in the room as well, just kind of to bring it down. The walls are grey. So what I've also got here is a stack of fabrics that I rescued from landfill a couple of years ago and then sorted through into colours. So I just went out into the barn and brought the box of grey, and there's lots of different sizes, some are little, some are big, but I'd quite like to use some of these and maybe patchwork it. So I'm just going to check the size. Quickly. So 54 inches, 2 54-inch draught excluders. I'm going to stuff them with K-POC, and I may weight them, but I haven't had a look at how I want to weight them yet. But what I want to do is start off by making a kind of a base, so getting the size base done and making sure that I've got the right lengths for everything. But I can't decide yet whether I'm going to do them in strips, so denim and then a section of grey, or whether I'm going to do long. Haven't made my mind up about that yet. But denim is such a good fabric to use. This is, most of this has a little bit of stretch in it. But if you don't want the thing that you're making to stretch, you simply put one stretch one way and one stretch the other. And as you work, what happens then is it cancels the stretch out. So instead of it all going in the same direction, you're actually going, I'm stopping the stretch, I'm starting the stretch. It's very, very similar to when I make memory quilts for people from baby clothes. Most of the baby clothes are jersey, so baby grows, t-shirts, what have you. And if you do them all in one way, most of it is they want them made into blankets or quilts or something like that. And if you stitch jersey together all in the same way, you end up with this massively stretchy thing. It becomes very unwieldy. So baby grows, you normally, when I strip them out, you get 4-inch, maybe 5-inch squares to do patchworking with. And so you simply tile them. And it just cancels the stretch out. It makes it so much easier to work with because you don't end up with two together with a very long stretch. So the one that you've turned is a non-stretch side. It holds the stretchy side together. So it's exactly the same when you're doing things with denim, especially stretch denim. And most of the denim that gets recycled now is stretch denim. These have been in a bag waiting to be used for ages, and in fact they were earmarked for me to do a rug in the kitchen out of, but I've changed my mind on that now. I've just made a dog bed out of recycled denim as well, so I'm trying to use up my bit because there's so much that got donated that I want to get rid of mine, and then I can focus on what the classes are doing rather than thinking, but I've got loads of my own. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to work out size wise, get the pieces cut, and then we'll look at putting them all together and making a really nice looking couple of draught excluders and get them stitched together. I've got one of my machines is in here, so actually, it sits on the floor and it comes onto the ironing board and goes back on the floor and back up onto the ironing board. And I have to hold it a little bit because this ironing board's a little bit bouncy. But you can do it. It's not impossible, and it's really useful when you're working on an ironing board because you can pin stuff to the ironing board. So instead of like on a table where it slips and slides, you can actually pin it in. So for patchworking, it's brilliant because you can lay pieces out, stick a pin straight through, and just secure it. Okay, that works. And it's a really, really useful way of working. I have to say, when I lived in my previous cottage was a railwayman's cottage, and it was tiny. It was like a doll's house, and it was just the perfect place for me on my own. It was lovely. And I had a big German Shepherd at the time, 3 cats, so it was a bit crowded at times. But anyway, my kitchen had a really lovely long work surface. This one hasn't, but my previous one did. So I used the long work surface, and then I had an ironing board here. And I covered sofas, and I made curtains, and I made bed linen, and I made lots of Lauren's clothes when she was a baby. And it was brilliant. You know, I never had any problem working in a small space. I'm so used to working on an ironing board that this is like second nature to me. Working on a table is not something that I do that often. I like working on ironing boards. I like being able to stick pins in things and make sure that they don't move. So it's a really useful thing. The only thing I don't like about this one is it rocks. My old one was a wooden one. It was really solid. But anyway, I'll get these cut out, and then we'll look at putting them all together. If I'm processing jeans, or if I'm going to use jeans, I tend to strip them out before I do anything with them so that I know exactly how much fabric I've got. You can, I quite like the double stitching, so I tend to strip them last just in case I want to use them. For this project I'm not going to, so what I'm doing is just stripping up both seam lines. The scissors will just run up between them, and then in some cases I unpick the hem, because you do get some quite nice striping. But again, for this I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to get rid of it because it's in the way and I don't want it. And then I'm just stripping up the seam here. So basically what I'm doing is creating a strip of fabric. I'll square it off in a little while. But it just means then that you've got a lot of workable fabric without any interruptions. If I'm making cushions or covers or bags or anything like that, a lot of the class projects have been really interesting. They've been making bags and all sorts of things out of this, and they've used all of the details. One of my students made a lovely patchwork jacket, and she used the belt loops and the Levi's badge on the back and other little details from it, and little pockets and so forth. And it was wonderful because it just told a story. So these are some of the ones that I've already semi-stripped out. And again, I'm literally just running up and getting rid of all of the seams that are really, they're not going to be useful for me in this project because I want just nice clean fabric. So I'll just finish this pile up and then look at construction. And I've got a lovely little pile going on the floor, which I will tidy up at some point. My poor floor in this room ends up at the moment, the whole of the carpet just ends up covered in bits of thread and bits of fabric, and Rosie's really partial to recycling cardboard. So every time I finish a box of something, she gets the box. So invariably, by the end of a day's work, it'll look like a kind of some weird sweatshop recycling centre. But we have fun. And it all fits in the recycling bin way easier than if I'm putting a whole box in. So it's good enrichment behaviour for her. And it kind of does me a favour as well. So there. Anyway, I'm nearly done with this. So I'll just finish up. Lovely and warm now. Ooh, so lovely and warm now. Nearly finished processing all the lengths so that they're all the same size. Victorian builders certainly did know how to build a good fireplace. They knew how to build a good chimney. But I have to tell you the story of this chimney, because up until a couple of weeks back the fire was inactive, and the reason the fire was inactive was because jackdaws had decided to make a nest in it, and it coincided with us getting Luna. So Lauren, my daughter, asked if she could light the fire for her birthday. Yep, go ahead. And we had a living room full of smoke. So I knew that something was stuck up there. And I said, oh, never mind, we'll get it swept in the spring. It was nearly Christmas, and I'm not going to get a chimney sweep now. Oh, that's all of them done. And so I left it. And then we got Luna. And Luna was absolutely terrified of fire. So I thought, well, you know, I'm in for 12, 13, 14 years with this dog. Not really much point in me wasting money having the fire chimney swept if I can't light it. So I ignored it. Little did I know that the jackdaws would, obviously they would nest every year because it was a good size and they loved it. And I didn't worry about getting it capped. And then I have no Luna, my radiators don't work, so, oh, I need the fire. Well, I have the most amazing chimney sweep who came along. He's called Jim, and he came along and he spent, I think it was 4 hours, and he didn't stop working for the whole of those 4 hours, and we had bags and bags of composted sticks and just dirt where they'd thrown everything down. And I have 2 chimneys that do this, so one's in the kitchen and one's here, and they come up and then they meet, and then there's 2 pots, and they cassellate like that, so the bricks, and they've got stuck on the bricks and it was a big job, and I really did feel guilty for leaving it. So a word of warning, if you have chimneys, please get them swept every year, because that poor guy was exhausted. And he did say afterwards it was the worst he's ever seen. So I was mortified. Anyway, it's done now. So it's warmed the house up. It's really lovely. The denim is all at the same length. So I know that I want 27 inches. I work in inches. I can't work in centimetres. I have no idea what they look like. So I want a 27 inch round, which will give me a 26 inch plus a little bit sausage. It's going to be 54 inches long. So what I've decided to do is actually stripe it with greys interlinked. So because I'm going to do that, I can't change the stretch the way that I'd said before. So I'm going to use the grey fabric to counterbalance the stretch. So the stretch will always be, that doesn't stretch, that does stretch. Some of these aren't that stretchy, but the stretch will be that way, which is not ideal because I don't want the thing to become like a squeeze box. But because I'm putting fabric in that is not stretchy, it will counter that stretch out, so it won't stretch, because each individual bit will only go as far as it can. It won't add. So they're all ready to go. So I've now got to decide how I lay the greys out, what I add to each other, because none of them big enough to have the whole stretch. So I'm going to have to patchwork them and join them together. So I'm going to throw them around a little bit and take you with me on the design process, and we'll see what we can come up with inserts. So it'll be mainly denim, and then there'll be different width inserts within, so they'll have a little bit of a stripe to them. So do you remember when I said it's really useful to have an ironing board where you can pin things to? Well, I've got a tape measure that I wrecked a bit because I chopped the end off of it at some point, but I can pin it to this. So what I've done is I've pinned the tape measure along here, so I've got 27 inches roughly, which is the length of fabric that I need for the strips. So it means that I can piece the fabrics and have a rough idea of how long they're going to be, because none of these are very big. These all came out of pattern books that were going in the tip, and it was she's a interior designer, but she sources all the fabrics for any of the work, and she was having a massive clear out, and I ended up with all the books. It was a colossal amount of stripping out of books, but anyway, it was lovely because I do slow stitch kits, so some of this stuff ends up in slow stitch kits, but I also make tote bags and things out of them, and they end up, there were such beautiful fabrics. So I'm just looking at these and thinking there's really lovely soft greys, so maybe some of them, there's some gorgeous textures as well. This one's got quite a lovely, it's almost like silver birch. I almost don't want to use this. In fact, I'm not going to, because it's too much like silver birch. That's going in another project. Then there's another one that's quite a funky pattern. This is another kind of woven texture. I don't want to put two similars together particularly. I quite like that, so I'm going to start kind of laying them out, and gives me an idea of what I want to put where. That's too stripy. It's something with a little bit less. Maybe take the direction different. Not not sure about this one. It's a real trial and error. Maybe that way, and then that would break it up. That would be quite nice. I quite like that. So what I will do is pin these together as a strip. There's a tip to pinning when you're going to be using a machine, is if you pin with your fabric towards you and the pinning edge away from you, you'll always have the pins running in the right direction when you then put them into the sewing machine. I don't tack, I pin, so I want my pins to be in the right direction for me to stitch. And it works. So there's a little tip. So that's one strip, which I quite like. I might change my mind, but at the moment I'm happy with that, although it is slightly short of 27 inches. So I may add a little bit onto the end, maybe a dark grey. Yeah, that's quite like that. That's a bit contrasty. And then that will give me enough fabric for a trim down. Difficult, isn't it? But yeah, I quite like that one. So there's one pile of denims over there. So I've got a very, very stripy fabric. I'm going to put another pin in that, it's disappearing. Got quite a stripy fabric there, so I want to have something that's a little softer. Maybe just have a plain. And I've got a little bit. Ooh. Don't know, not sure about that. I'm not sure about that actually. Quite like that, it's a bit quieter. Or maybe... This is always quite fun when you've got fabrics that are mixed sizes and very different designs. It's a challenge to get them to lay and look right. I don't like that one with it, I think that's wrong. Quite like the shiny. Is that too much though? Maybe that one is better. With a dark in the middle. Yeah, let's do that. They're just peppering. The idea is that they pepper the blue, so they just break the blue up a bit. I like that. These are furnishing fabrics, so they're durable, and they're hard wearing for things like door stops and what have you. They'll take a little bit of throwing around. Yeah, quite like that. It's a little bit funky in a good way. So I've got that one which I like, and that will probably end up being cut in half, so I could actually use that again. I don't like it with that though. I'm not sure. Just doing it on the hoof. maybe that with a little bit of quiet in the middle. Yeah, quite like that. Now, do I want harder strip? Yes, I think I will. I think that would be lovely. And it all looks a bit crazy until it all goes together. And then when it all gets put together, it looks far less crazy. I will actually open the seams out on these, but obviously when it's pinned it's a bit lumpy. That needs to be squared up. I'll talk you through using a square rule, because I get asked this so many times and it's such a useful piece of kit. So when I come to square all of these up, I'll show you how to use them. They look like this. They're patchworking tools really, but they are so good for squaring up. But you have to be careful because they have a 1/2 inch extra on one side and one edge, so 2 edges. And it's so that you've got seam allowances when you're cutting blocks for patchwork. But I find them really handy to use as a measure. They're really good. So that's that one put together. I might come back to these and go, I've changed my mind. But for the moment, we'll go with it. That's got a lovely texture to it. And that one is quite a nice quiet grey. So maybe we put a darker grey in the middle. Yes, I like that. Which side do I like the best? One side's got a sort of texture to it and the other side is the back side really, but actually it's quite a nice smooth. No, I'll go with the right side. If you can hear a funny noise in the background, it's actually my dog snoring. Like I said earlier, she does love a sofa and she does snore. I recorded her the other day. So there we go. Hello, there's a bent pin. We don't use bent pins. Bent pins will always guarantee that they'll stab you at some point, so if I get a bent pin it goes in the bin. There's another set. So I've got quite a flashy looking piece there, which I feel needs slightly toning down, but that one's got a similar energy. So maybe that one needs to be split with something slightly less exciting. No, definitely not that one. So maybe that one, and I'll just cut it down. But I won't do that yet. I'll wait till I've worked out how wide I want them all. So for the time being, I'm literally just pinning them together so I know what's going with what. So you're in on the design process. And then that piece will go on there. And then I can square everything up and work out how wide they're all going to be. Quite like that. So what have we got left here? That's not really grey enough, that's more of a beige, so I'm going to throw that one out the window. That one is, I don't know, that way round maybe. Maybe with that in the middle. Yeah, quite like that. Okay, that's surprised myself. I didn't think I would, but I do. You have to you have to kind of sit them all together before you discover what you like and what you don't like. The only thing I don't like about this fabric is it's hideous for fraying. So I'm going to give myself extra, actually I'm going to move that in a bit. If you have got something that frays really badly, give yourself a little bit more room when you have a seam allowance. And then I'll make sure that that's finished off. I have a love-hate relationship with overlockers. I have an overlocker, but it's quite badly behaved. But I have an overlocker on my sewing machine that's on the floor down here beside me. So I may actually just use that. Yeah, that's nice. And then that I think will trim off all that one. I don't know which. I might give myself a little bit, actually I'm going to give myself a little bit less in the middle, I think. Let's do it like that. That balances out better. Right, what have I got left? And does any of those, they don't go with anything, I don't like any of those particularly. The only one that we could maybe do is that one, and that one. Maybe. I'm not sure, that's more of a brown than a grey though. No, I think I'm going to leave those, they don't really work. So I've got a series of strips, grey strips, and I've got my pieces of denim cut. So what I now have to do is figure out how they're going to sit, where the greys are going to piece, and then work out my length. So it's a 54-inch length, so it's quite a long length. So it's going to take a fair amount. So there'll be more denim than there will be grey, but the greys will be just like a couple in each of accents, or maybe 3 to work out. What have I got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, perfect, 3 each. Yeah, so they'll just go as an accent, and the rest will be denim. But I can split the blues because there's such a lovely variety of different blues. So I can move the blues through and maybe go from dark to light or something like that. Maybe darks on the ends and coming in. So I'll play around with that and we'll see what we get. So that'll be my next step.